Hi there, my name is Karen Masters. I'm a professor at Haverford College, which is a small liberal arts college near Philadelphia in the US. And this is an eTalk for IAU Symposium 373, Resolving the Rise and Fall of Star Formation. I'm here to talk with you about Galaxy Zoo 3D, which is a follow-up project linked with the MaNGA survey, themed around going beyond azimuthal averaging for making use of the beautiful three-dimensional MaNGA data. So as you may know, SDSS-IV MaNGA is one of these large-scale IFU surveys that just recently completed its sample of 10,000 galaxies, nearby galaxies, each of which has a full three-dimensional data cube of IFU data. All of these data are now public through the SDSS website. They comprised a big chunk of the final data release from the fourth phase of the SDSS project. IFU data is complex, so each of these 10,000 galaxies has a data cube where we get images of the galaxy at many, many different wavelengths or spectra at one of many different spatial pixels in the galaxy. That's illustrated there on the left. On the right, MaNGA also provides some analysis of these data, creating these map data structures where each of the maps is a 2D image of a certain spectral feature or a quantity that can be derived from spectra. The MaNGA data go in these sort of hexagonal shapes. So there in the middle, you see the optical image of the galaxy with the hexagon overlaid, and the maps there have this sort of hexagonal shape. So the data is complex, but galaxies are also complex. They show a lot of different features and structures. A lot of my research has been to do with these morphologies and shapes in galaxies, making use of Galaxy Zoo, a crowdsourcing technique to identify these structures. And in MaNGA, we have 10,000 galaxies, each of which can have different kinds of structures. And so each of these spatial pixels, the spectra might be coming from a different feature. One of the ways people deal with this multidimensional data is through azimuthal averaging. So we have an example of this on the right from Ibarra Medel in 2016, showing a MaNGA galaxy with the hexagon again there. And the lower plot is indicating the radial binning scheme that they have made use of. This is super easy to do in MaNGA data. It's actually one of the maps that's provided is the polar coordinates or the elliptical radius coordinates of the galaxy, assuming a thin disk model. And so many people have made use of this to get some really interesting results, which use this kind of radial averaging. For example, Belfiore et al. 2017 is beautiful plot showing how the gas phase metallicity depends on radius in different mass bins of galaxies, showing much steeper gradients in high mass galaxies, lower gradients in lower mass galaxies. You can go even a step further, right, and fit a line to this and plot the gradient against some property of the galaxy. So there's an example of that in the middle from Wang et al. 2018. Where the y-axis is the gradient of the D4000 indicator. And on the x-axis, we have the central value and three different types of galaxies showing different behavior of the gradient with the central value. Many other results, many other really cool results from MaNGA and other similar surveys use a similar technique. We wondered if we could do a little better and basically mark or create masks saying where in a galaxy each spaxel was located. So whether or not it was in a spiral, interarm region, in a bar, for example, et cetera. Humans are great at feature detection, and I've worked with the Galaxy Zoo for a long time. So it seemed like there was a Galaxy Zoo solution to this. This crowdsourcing method where we ask many people to do the classification and then aggregate the result makes this kind of thing very reproducible and quantitative. So we made use of Zooniverse to crowdsource feature detection in MaNGA galaxies. This is a screen grab of what the site looked like. You can take a look at the site. It's still live, although we're done collecting all the data. We finished collecting data back in 2019. We asked people to do 4 different tasks: mark the center of the galaxy, mark any foreground stars they saw, and then if a bar was present, to draw a box around the bar, and if spiral arms were present, to draw freehand around the spiral arms, a little bit like paint, for those of you who remember that. We actually did all MaNGA target galaxies because we did this before the MaNGA observing was complete. So we wanted basically anything that might be observed by MaNGA. So the full sample for Galaxy Zoo is about 3 times larger than the actual sample that have MaNGA data. And we made use of Galaxy Zoo morphologies for pre-selection. So we only asked people to mark a bar on galaxies where Galaxy Zoo had already said there was a bar. Galaxy Zoo has done morphological classification for basically all of the MaNGA sample. We launched this and we advertised it primarily to the Galaxy Zoo volunteer community, and it was pretty popular initially. We had a peak of over 100,000 drawings in one day, just after launch. As is pretty typical for crowdsourcing projects, it then tails off, and we had a second push a bit later to finish the project with much lower rates, but we were able to finish it by the end of 2019. We then have to aggregate the data. And so this is an example of what that aggregation looks like. We complete a task on a specific galaxy when 15 people had answered it. And then in the case of the foreground stars and galaxy centers, those are clicks, and those positional clicks are clustered using a DB scan clustering technique. For the bars and spirals, where we're enclosing a set of spaxels, or each user encloses a set of spaxels in that feature, we provide heat maps, which say how many of the different 15 users enclosed a given spaxel in their feature. And so that's what's shown in the orange and blue in there, revealing where the bar, the sort of consensus region for the bar and spirals. I want to give some credit here to my co-author Coleman Krozik, who wrote this aggregation code and did this work. And so it is all available now for use. Here's another example showing a little bit more about of what you can do with these masks combined with the MaNGA data. So for example, in the lower right here, you can overplot contours at a specific threshold level, showing where the bar or spiral arm feature are on top of MaNGA maps, all of the other MaNGA maps. So you can look at how different features in, for example, the H-alpha flux map, which is panel D here, how that correlates with where the spiral arms are, or look for shifts in the rotation shown in panel E that might correspond to features. You can also plot the flux per spaxel as a function of, for example, azimuth in panel C there, and color-coded by different features. So the blue points in panel C are the H-alpha flux in the spiral and showing how that varies with azimuth, and the orange there are the bars. So you can see that the bar, kind of the direction of the bar from that plot pretty easily. Some examples of this being put into use. So the foreground stars that were marked in Galaxy Zoo 3D are in the MaNGA pipeline. They're actually masked out in the step that goes from the cube to these analysis maps, the data analysis pipeline. This was based on work from a summer student a few years ago, where we looked at the spectra of all of the Galaxy Zoo 3D marked foreground stars, and we decided as long as at least 10 people marked something as a foreground star, it was always a star. And so those are actually masked out in the MaNGA data pipeline. Some examples of bar masks being used. So this is a piece of work by Amelia Fraser McKelvey, 2019, where she made use of Galaxy Zoo bar masks and looked at the age gradient of the cell populations in the bar mask and in spaxels at the same radius as the bar, but not in the bar mask. Showing flatter age gradients in bars, which is a nice illustration of the kind of radial mixing you might expect to get in a bar. Amelia also did this other piece of work using the bar masks, where she's looking at the ionization classification of H-alpha flux in bars, and also how much H-alpha flux there is present in bars, which is an interesting piece of work. Similarly, Dinesh Krishnarao using a Milky Way analog sample in MaNGA. So this is a set of galaxies that have similar masses and other properties to the Milky Way, use the bar masks to look at, again, the ionization classification from a BPT type analysis, revealing, interestingly, this commonality in Milky Way analogs, at least, of star forming rings just outside bar, which is kind of interesting, and lots of other stuff in that paper too, but that was using the bar masks there. For spiral masks, these are a little bit trickier to use because deciding what the right threshold is a little bit tricky. A student of mine, an undergraduate student of mine who just graduated from Haverford a couple of years ago, worked on this for his senior thesis work, and we published some of this in the data release paper for the project. Shuaib was able to determine that a threshold of at least 3 people enclosing the spiral was about right. So here's an illustration of the same galaxy in each row. And then each column is a different threshold choice. So at least 1 person for the first column, 3, 5, and 7. If you make that threshold too high, you don't get any spaxels identified with the feature. If it's too low, pretty much all of the galaxy ends up being identified as spiral arm. So you have to kind of decide for yourself what the right threshold is. And we picked 3. At that threshold, we saw a clear enhancement of star formation in spirals. So the histogram there shows the the percent of the total star formation of the galaxy that's in the spiral mass compared to the percent of the spaxels in the spiral mass. So it's basically looking at the amount of enhancement. If there was no enhancement, it would be peaked around 1, but you can see that it's clearly shifted. And we also saw that that increased with radius, which is interesting. So the impact of spirals on star formation seems to be a little larger at larger radius, which is interesting. Definitely a lot of follow-up work suggested from that. So if you found this interesting and you think there's a use case for these Galaxies U3D masks in your science with MaNGA, all of this is now publicly available. We released it as a value-added catalog in the final data release alongside the final MaNGA sample. There's also code that was released in the Marvin code base, which is used for data access for MaNGA. So there's a tutorial where you can work through and you can make most of the plots I've shown in this talk and some other plots making use of these masks with the MaNGA data. And in addition to that, both Coleman and I have some code on our GitHub accounts, which might be useful. And you can take a look at the paper where we released all of this Masters et al. 2021. Just to wrap up with some thanks to the many volunteers who contributed both through Galaxy Zoo and Galaxy Zoo 3D. We can't do this work without their clicks and drawings in this case. Also thanks to the MaNGA team and Coleman, my co-authors Coleman Krozik for lots of work on Galaxy Zoo 3D coding and the work that Shuaib did in his senior thesis, as well as other undergraduates involved in the development and analysis of this project. Thanks very much.